Hi, I'm Caitlin and welcome to my YouTube channel. For today's video, I wanted to do a video on what makeup products I think are worth splurging on and what makeup products I think you can save money on. So if you're just starting out in makeup and you're trying to build a collection, it's sort of like, where should I buy my makeup? Should I go to Sephora and buy everything? Do I go to the drugstore and buy everything? What's worth spending your money on? And what can you save a little cash on? So I want to start off with base products, so primer, foundation, and concealer. Primer, for me, I think is sort of not that necessary. I think primer is something that is really new, like within the last 10 or so years there have actually been marketed primers, but before that I think most people just put stuff on their skin and then went with it. So I think you can really get away with using a moisturizer instead of a primer. Like for me, I use the Kiehl's Ultra Facial Moisturizer and sometimes I don't even put a primer over it. I think if you have dry skin, something like this that sort of has a tackiness to it after you apply it will help your foundation to really stick to it and adhere to it and stay all day. If you have oily skin, just prep your skin the way that you normally would. I haven't found any really great primers at the drugstore, and I haven't found any primers at Sephora that I think are completely necessary. I definitely think that you can just get away with doing good skincare and that being your base. Foundations, I have high-end foundations and I have drugstore foundations. Honestly, I feel like the drugstore foundations are just as good as high-end foundations if you find the right one for your skin type. I don't really think that you have to spend $50 on a Dior foundation or a Nars foundation or any of those. I definitely think that Loreal has really good ones, Maybelline has really good ones, even CoverGirl, and they're all under $20. I think the L'Oreal ProGLow is in the $12 range depending on where you're buying it from. And I really just think that anything that you're putting on top of your foundation is still going to look good with a drugstore foundation. It's not something that you really need to spend a ton of money on, because in reality, unless you can't find a foundation in your shade at the drugstore, they're all pretty much similar. There are a lot of similar formulas at the drugstore that are at Sephora. Concealer is the same thing for me. I think that you can definitely get away with just buying a cheaper one at the drugstore. The Maybelline FitMe concealer is really good. The Better Skin concealer from Maybelline is also really good. If you want to go high-end, just because you've heard a lot of hype about the Tarte Shape Tape, this is my favorite concealer and I definitely think it's worth the money, but I don't think that it's necessary. The Colourpop concealers are also really good. Colourpop is in Ulta now, but they are primarily sold online. They're only $6 and I think that they're comparable to the Shape Tape, though they don't have as much coverage. But I definitely think that as far as base products go, you can definitely save your money. You don't really have to spend a ton of money to get a good base. Everything that I'm wearing on my face today is a drugstore or affordable product as my base. So yeah, I don't think that you need to buy super expensive base products. Moving on, the thing that I 100%, if I had to pick anything out of any category, would spend my money on is eyeshadow palettes. I think that having a good eyeshadow palette from Sephora or a bigger brand, this is a Too Faced palette, I think that they're really good. I haven't been able to find anything at the drugstore that has the right blendability or pigmentation or isn't super patchy or powdery or just blends away. But if I was going to spend my money on anything, I would spend it on an eyeshadow palette, and that's not just because I like to collect them. I think that they're just a lot easier to use, and even though they're more expensive, I think that this is something that's worth it. So with the Chocolate Bar palette, I think this is a great palette for beginners. It has a lot of neutral matte shades and a lot of sparkly, glittery shades that I think can make full eye looks, and I definitely would recommend buying palettes over buying single eyeshadows. Single eyeshadows are just going to break the bank eventually if you're buying so many of them to make your own palette. I think it's much more worth it to spend your money on a high-end palette. This is the Tartelette Toasted palette. It's another good neutral palette, a good starting out palette. The only alternative that I've found that I really like to high-end palettes are Colourpop palettes. Colourpop, pretty much, you can buy anything from them and it's going to be high-end quality for a lower price. These are $16. This is the Give It To Me Straight palette. It's another good neutral palette, leans more toward the mauve-y side, but these are actually really blendable. They do get a little patchy on me sometimes, just depending on like the brush I'm using or the technique that I'm using, but yeah, if you're going to splurge on something, I would recommend an eyeshadow palette. Definitely, like 100%, that is the one thing that I will always splurge on. I'm not really big into any drugstore palettes, and if I ever find one, I will be sure to let you know. Next, moving on to bronzer. Bronzer is another one that I haven't really found a lot of good ones at the drugstore besides the Physicians Formula butter bronzers. But these are still about $15 to $16 depending on what store you're buying them at. And though they're like really, really good, I don't think that it would be that much to just go and buy a high-end bronzer. It wouldn't be like much of a price difference. I believe the Hoola bronzer is in the 20s range, and you know, bronzer is something that lasts a lot longer. Powders in general last longer than like cream products or liquid products, which both have expiration dates. Powders have expiration dates, but it's usually like 12 months compared to like 6 months from a cream. So I definitely think that they're worth spending the money on if you want to. If you don't, I think the Physicians Formula ones are the best at the drugstore, even though they are still pricey. The other bronzers that I've tried out from the drugstore just end up coming off too orange for me, and sometimes a little bit patchy. I think that the Sephora brands or the prestige brands, high-end brands, definitely do powders better than drugstores, except in blushes. Blushes are something that I will never splurge on unless it's like a fun limited edition blush palette. I think that the blushes at the drugstore are just as good as blushes at high-end stores or from high-end brands. Wet n Wild has really good ones, the Color Icon ones. NYX has really good ones. I haven't been able to find a blush from a high-end brand that I really think is worth the money, because I find that blush is sort of the first thing to fade from your makeup. It doesn't really stay as pigmented throughout the day. Like, you don't have a bright pink cheek on all day, and you sort of want it to be diffused. You don't want to have crazy bold blush on because it's sort of distracting. But yeah, I think that the drugstore has a lot of really good blushes, and if I was gonna save my money on anything, it would definitely be blush. I would just not recommend spending a ton of money on blush when it's just an accent to your makeup. Next up, I have highlighters, and I think highlighters are something that can really go either way. If you're somebody like me who loves highlighting and loves buying highlighters, then I definitely don't see a problem in splurging. These Nars ones are fantastic. So the new Nars ones, this is the shade Fort de France, and it's great. Like, it's really pretty. It has a great sheen. It's beautiful. The Wet n Wild ones, which are like I think under $6, are also really, really great. So I think that's one that really just depends on your tastes. If you really want like a blinding highlight and you want it to be on all day and not to fade away throughout the day, then maybe splurge on it. Splurge on one from Sephora, one from Nars, or Hourglass. Hourglass has great highlighters. If you aren't really like a super big fan of highlighting and you don't really feel like you need like a super sheeny cheek, then go with drugstore ones. Maybelline has great ones. The Master Chrome, they're really, really good. They just don't go with my skin tone. These Wet n Wild Mega Glow highlighting powders are really great, and they have a bunch more colors now. This is the shade Precious Petals, but they have, I think, like 6 or so shades for different skin tones. And then, oh, I forgot to talk about powders. So face powders, stick to the drugstore. I don't really think that it makes a huge difference. I know everybody's into like the Laura Mercier loose setting powder, but I really think that this Maybelline FitMe powder is a great loose powder from the drugstore. The Kokie Cosmetics one people are obsessed with, and I just really don't think that powder is something that you need to go out of your way to spend like $40 $5 on when you could spend like $12 on this. On to eyebrows. So I tend to use the Anastasia line for my eyebrows just because, you know, she has such a great reputation for her brow products and her brow salon, but I really don't think that it's necessary to spend a ton of money on eyebrow products. This is just a powder, and honestly you could get the same payoff from an eyeshadow that is of the same shade. I mean, it's just a brown eyeshadow. And then this is the L'Oreal Brow Stylish Shape and Fill Brow Pencil. It is pretty much a dupe for the Anastasia Beverly Hills Brow Definer, and if you don't want to spend a lot of money on a brow product, I would just go with this. I don't think that you need to break the bank trying to get your eyebrows to look like eyebrows, because I just feel like they're all very, very similar. Pencils in general I think are very similar. I don't really use eyeliner, but I would never splurge on like a pencil eyeliner because I think there are so many good ones at the drugstore that it's not really necessary to spend upwards of $20 on a pencil. I just think that the payoff is going to be pretty similar with certain brands. Of course, there's always going to be differences between brands even in the drugstore. I mean, you have to find the ones you like. L'Oreal and Maybelline and Wet n Wild are ones that I think have really, really great products for lower prices. Moving on to lip products. Lip products are another thing that I just don't think is necessary to spend a ton of money on. You know, during the Kylie Cosmetics craze, I did buy a liquid lipstick from her. They're exactly the same as the Colourpop ones. The Colourpop ones are $6. These are $24, I believe. Other than that, I pretty much buy my lip products at the drugstore. Maybelline, L'Oreal, really good. Colourpop glosses are my favorite. I just don't think that, even though I do own high-end lip products, I just really don't think that it's necessary unless you see something that you really, really want from a brand you really like. Like, I bought the Fenty Gloss Bomb because I thought it was really, really cool. I like Rihanna. I liked her branding. I liked the packaging, and I really wanted it. So I spent my money on that, but it was something that I really wanted. So it wasn't something that I was like, I need a gloss, I'm gonna buy this $18 Fenty gloss. No, if I needed a gloss, I would go to the drugstore and find one that I thought was a decent price and would give me good color payoff. So I think it's really all about figuring out what it is that you really want versus what you need, and what you need, maybe spend a little less money on it just because it's not like a fun purchase that you're making because you think it will be a fun addition to your collection. The last thing I want to talk about is setting sprays. I have setting sprays that are high-end, and I have setting sprays that are from the drugstore. This is the Milani Make It Last spray. This is the Urban Decay All Nighter spray. They do the same thing. This one is, I think, $12, and this one is like $24. I would definitely go with the Milani one. I like it a lot better. It doesn't leave my face as dry, even though they both have alcohol in them, which isn't great for your skin, but it'll keep your makeup on a pretty long time. I just think that spending that much money on a spray is not really necessary. So that's pretty much all of the product categories that I wanted to talk about, but of course it's really up to your discretion. If there's a product that you really have your eye on and it's more expensive than you'd like to spend, save your money for it. I think that's something that I've always done. The bulk of the makeup that I bought when I pretty much was only working part-time. So I would save up my money to buy the things that I really wanted, like the things that were a little more expensive, like the Tarte palette, or I would ask for Christmas for gifts that were more high-end. But for the most part, I really think that you can build a makeup collection with mostly drugstore products. I don't think that it's super necessary to spend a ton of money on your makeup. So yeah, I would definitely, for base products, I think the drugstore is a great place to start. For all products, I think the drugstore is a great place to start, but if I was going to splurge on anything, it would definitely be eyeshadow palettes and highlighters. And everything else, I really think that you can find great alternatives at the drugstore. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope you learned something, and I hope that it'll help you to be able to build your own makeup collection. If you want to see more videos from me, definitely subscribe to my channel below, and I'm going to put out new videos every week. I'm about to get new lighting, so hopefully I'll be able to film in a different area so that I'm not in front of a blank wall. But yeah, definitely subscribe to my channel, give this video a like, let me know if there's any types of videos that you'd like to see in the future from me. If you want to follow me on Instagram, I'll leave all of my information below. So yeah, thanks so much for watching. Bye!